Hello everybody, welcome back. We're going to be talking about compositing. Compositing is essentially the last frontier. It's the final step before our baby CG project becomes an adult. It's the final step where we can put that final finesse, that final last step of control. So we have all of our renders done, all of our passes, everything is ready to be processed and put into comp, and that's where we're going to be creating our final image. So let's do it. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our final stop. This is the final process in our CG journey. I think it's going to be very cool. This is the comp. I kept it quite simple, even though maybe for some of you it looks a bit frightening, but this is actually a simple comp. This is an even simpler comp, and this is what we're going to be working with. We're going to be taking a look at how to combine different passes together when they're just soloed out like this, and then you start combining everything and color correcting and color grading, get to this, and then this is the final result at the end. We're going to be taking a look at how to do that and how to do color correction. You can see here, that's the image that I was taking out. Then in the end I took as a reference. You can see our colors are very similar in the blues, in the orange levels. It's very similar. It's always good to have references like that. This one as well. This one was very useful to get the right level of brightness for our explosion, also the color and so on. Even though this one is a bit more green, but like I said, I went for this version, and you can see this is from Rogue One. The other one is from Star Wars. And here you can see our black levels are very similar as well. All right, cool. Let's continue. Let's see what we have here. So these are the passes that we rendered. Let's quickly go through them. So we have our geometry pass. I could break this down even more, so you would have the ship separate, and then just maybe even the rocks separate. There is something you can do, it's called a crypto matte, that will kind of give a color to specific objects, but in this case I was not using it. So our next pass is the clouds themselves. Go at the beginning, we're gonna see them a bit better. Here we go. And then we have our smoke pass and our explosions. They're also combined. You can then still separate them with the emission pass. So if we go here and check our emissions, you can see we only have our essentially flames, the stuff that is bright. All right, let's go back to our RGB. And then we have our atmospheric pass. Here you can see a very cool reflection happening on the ship. That's coming from the explosion. And then we have the geolite that I was showing you before. And of course our sparks that come at the end. Now there was a thing that I didn't render this with motion blur, which is something you would render. Sometimes you would render with motion blur. In this case I didn't render with motion blur, and I didn't want to put any motion blur on my sparks because my sparks already have they already have streaks that would resemble a motion blur, like a motion blur spark. Otherwise, sparks are actually just tiny dots or balls in space, and they become the motion blur. The streakiness comes from the motion blur in some cases, well, in most cases. So we already added kind of fake motion blur to this in our effect. All right, so let's start comping this. So what we would do is take this pass and this pass, merge them like so, and there you go. Passes like this because you can see in this pass our ship is actually a cutout. It's already subtracted in the rendering process. They just merge over each other and it's pretty much seamless. So our next pass would be our explosion pass. We will do the same thing here. Over, same thing here. Put it over like that. You can see everything is quite bright, but that's the whole reason of That's the whole point of compositing. Lights, we could put back here. And with lights, we're just gonna be adding them. Instead of get over, we're gonna be plussing them, like so. You can see now we're getting that reflection going on. That helps quite a lot. Don't mind the explosion at this point. It wasn't looking the best because we are going to be adding a lot of glow on top. So that is also something when you're doing look development, I would render very quick passes before I even go to comp, just to see what, just to prepare myself that I would know what to do in comp later. Okay, another one. Just gonna merge it in like that and put it to plus. There we go, super important. And then this goes over, or you can plus this one, not divide, although this looks pretty cool. But you can plus this one over or everything, or put it over. But in this case, I'm just gonna plus it. It's gonna work okay for us. All right, so we have this pass. Let's do a few tweaks to it because it's quite bright. Just so I can show you. We do at Rebelway, we do have a full compositing workshop, and in that workshop you actually get quite a lot of tools, like custom tools like this one. If you go to Rebelway, it's going to split out all of our passes here, so you can see all of our AOVs are going to be split just like so. I'm not going to use that here, I will just do it manually, but there's a thing called a shuffle. The shuffle works in a way, where we can shuffle out just that specific light. So we're gonna go with the fog, and that's cool. So now we just have the fog, and what we're gonna do is not merge it over again, although we are later, but from now we want to subtract it. So now you're getting that pass without that light. Isn't that cool? I always find simple things like that very cool. So what you can do now is merge it back in. Oops. Merge it back in, but this time we can color correct it. There we go. Not that we're actually looking at it. So we can color correct it now. So it's gone here, but we are putting it back here. But now we have full control. So in the beginning, I actually wanted this pass to be more visible. So like that. So you actually get some God rays happening, but not too visible. I didn't want it to be too noticeable. So I'm just gonna set a key. And when we come here towards the end, I will put this down quite a lot. We will go to my curve editor and just create a few more keyframes just so this becomes very smooth, like so. Now we can play it and see what that's gonna give us. All right, I think that's very cool. I think that's gonna work quite well for us. So yeah, see it, and you can see it becomes much more subtle towards the end. We can plus everything together now, and this is what we get. I think overall everything is quite bright, so I will put a color correction node after all of that, and just gamma, not offset, but just gamma everything down, like so. Now I don't necessarily like how my clouds are visible, so you can tone down the clouds here. Go back to our color correct. Oh, we go back to our explosion just so I put in the sparks as well. Forward. And you can see our light is also on for too long. You'll see that in a second. So even when our smoke, when our when the explosion is over, you can still see the light, and that's not something we want. So we also have to key all of them. But let's just put that maybe even after, like so. And now we have our sparks. Let's quickly do a color correction here. Let's see. Like at this point, we would have to gain set key and just gain this down to 0. Let's quickly check. So maybe it has to happen even a bit sooner. Let's go to our color correct, our curve, and just move it here. Something like that. Now it's not super, it was a bit harsh, so I would just do something like this, and now I think it's going to be pretty much perfect. So those are all the tricks that you would do. Also in the beginning, I would probably do another key here, make it brighter, and then here, make it, oops, make it less bright in the beginning, because maybe even here, key this up, and then even more when it comes closer. We can exaggerate this quite a lot. Don't worry if it gets clipped like that, because that would actually happen in real life as well. Sometimes we do want to add clipping in our footage so it looks less CG, because as we know in real life, even with your eyes, if you look at the sun, it's going to be completely clipped. So if everything is in perfect range, it sometimes gives it a very CG looking image. So that's why we try to add imperfections here as well. Not too much, but you know, later we do add glow on top of everything. So speaking of glow, let's use this pass. We're going to shuffle everything out like that. We're going to shuffle out the emission. We're going to use a, shoot, I forgot the name, Exponential Glow. Let me see, I have it here. So Exponential Glow. Use it like so. And I want to put this on top of everything. So if we just merge it here, let's say we merge it here, right? It's gonna work, but then here, just straighten this out. It's gonna work, but it's not gonna be affecting the passes that come after it. So what we're gonna do is put everything here after, and that will give us a correct glow in this case. So you can see how that would brighten up our image quite a lot. Ooh, maybe that's a bit harsh, but when we color correct it down, well, it's still a bit harsh. So let's go to our Exponential Glow and just multiply it down here. All right. So that's why you would have to kind of use references for this. And a lot of times I actually do 2 glows. So I would just copy paste this one. Oops. Copy paste this one. Add it here again. And make it much bigger, right? Or actually, let's make this one smaller and this one big. And we can merge the 2 of them together here. Just gonna plus them together, right? So we get a big and a small glow, and now that's the effect. And you can see how much that helps covering up any mistakes, or in this case, our explosion looks very grainy because the resolution was not high enough. So look at that, done. You don't see anything anymore. So that's how you would cover some of those mistakes. And now we have all of our passes together. Now you will see that this doesn't look exactly like my final render. And that is because I was tweaking quite a lot of passes to get it to that point. Another good one would be shuffling out the emission coming from here. Now don't do this. I'm not a professional compositor. That's why I'm gonna repeat again that we do have a professional compositing workshop, but definitely don't cross the streams like here. Make it a bit more organized than this. But you know what? For this, it's going to be fine just to showcase. So we have our emission here. And let's do another glow. Just glow the whole thing up. and let's make it like that. Maybe do a color correction at the end and make this a bit, I'm gonna glow this like that. And now we can, where we do this, we're just gonna push this here and put it to plus. So now you can see our clouds are coming back up, and we will be able to push this down even more and kind of compensate it with dark clouds. There we go. So you can see how much life that would bring to our image. And those are all the tricks and things that you can do in compositing. I think it's very cool. So, all right, let's get to our final comp, and let me just guide you step by step to what I was doing. So it was a very similar process here. This is our pass. You can see I was subtracting the lights here, so I could add them back in here and change the color. I did a similar thing here when I was just changing the environment light and the environment light and our HDR. Here I was just adding some more. See, these are all the special notes that you get with our Rebelway pack here. You can also get them on Wikipedia. All right, so here, and then I was adding the geolights that we would probably have to go to frame 15 to see. Geolights. Now at this point you can see that everything is becoming quite a bit bright, and that is why, because I was adjusting these levels with my final color grade and color correction applied. So bear with me now that we go through all of this. Here are our clouds that I was adding. In the beginning, I was actually adding an additional layer of clouds here just to cover up my ship a bit. So it felt more like my ship is actually coming through the clouds in the beginning. And sure, I could have done that in the render, but I didn't. So I did it in comp. So you can see how all of those decisions can then be still adjusted later. Explosion, like so. Here I was shuffling out all of the passes so I can then adjust them individually, right? And then plus everything back together, color correct it and make it a bit brighter, and then punch everything back in. This is our Atmos pass. That I was doing the same thing, and you can see I was using this layer, color correcting it, making it brighter, change the color, plusing it back in. Look at that. Super cool. And then I was removing the God rays coming from above, adding color correcting, bam. Here I was just doing a couple of extra fixes, and this is the environment, the clouds. And you can see nothing is actually clipped here. We are in full control of our whole pipeline. These are the sparks that I added in later. Here are the glows, and at this point, yeah, you would have to check your image and kind of put the exposure down. But after I did the grade and then color correct everything, and grading and color correcting is just changing the colors, changing different areas. See, this is when I was kind of still going for that look. And then I decided, oh well, just gonna crush it. Not crush it, but change the look to be a bit more brownish / greenish. And then I put everything down quite a lot to make it quite darker. So after you do all of this, in this case, I exported this final image. I was exporting it. Well, let me just, before I go away from this, I just want to show you for a second how you would color grade this. So we would look at both of these images like that, and we would do wipe. And you can then just make it like so. And now you would do a wipe, right? So if we start branching from this just as an experiment, you go here. Here we go. So we see that we have to be quite a lot darker, and we have a few helpers here in this section. You will see you have hue, saturation, and value. And in this case, the luminance value in our image is way too high. So we would have to gain down quite a lot. So here, if we're looking at this, we are in a similar kind of spot. Here we can look at the hue. So you can see we are quite close, but if we put down a grade, just a grade, we would be able to go into the multiply and now add even more corrections to this. So we get it even into closer. So you can see the hue on top and the bottom is pretty much identical in this case. We do have, I think, a bit too much saturation. So our saturation is 54. So we would have to probably put down another color correct. That's how I do them. Even though you can do it here, I just do them here. And now let's desaturate this. And now we went just a bit too much. So that's how you would do your grade. So now we are much closer to this, right? So you can see the difference if we now go between this and this. All right, so that's how you would color correct. Again, Nick shows all of this in much more detail in his compositing workshop. So here I was saying I was exporting this and then importing it back in because I was adding grain in and motion blur in After Effects because I have a better workflow to do that in After Effects, but you can add motion blur here as well, and you can add grain. So you have advanced grain. This is one of the plugins that you get with this pack. So advanced grain would also give you very cool. And there's also, yeah, that's fine. So you can do that here, but I did it in After Effects. So you can see now we actually have motion blur applied to our image, and before we didn't. And motion blur will help with, even if you do a quick test, if you wave your hand before your eyes, you're gonna get motion blur on your hand, right? So we need motion blur here as well. Otherwise this image would look way too perfect. So you can see here, no motion blur, and I added some grain. So it mimics the realism of this being actually shot on film. That's when I was saying that we actually then do start applying imperfections, because grain in theory is an imperfection. And if you go to any of the movies here that we had as reference, you can see they had grain as well, even though this is quite a compressed image. But yeah, they all have grain added on top. So it looks, you know, a little less CG. And then in the end, I got my sparks back in. Like I said, I didn't want to add additional motion blur to my sparks. So I think they look very cool and crispy. And then I added just a bit more glow on top to tie the whole image together. And that's it. That was then you export it. And that's the whole process when it comes to compositing a shot like this in Nuke. So we went through how to actually do it step by step, so you can see that it's not a big deal. And then here I was just adding a bit more tweaks to the whole image just to get it into a better space. And yeah, that's our final result. All right, so that's it. That's the final image. That's the final render. I think it looks pretty cool. If you guys have any additional questions, don't hesitate to email us at Rebelway, and don't hesitate to email me personally as well. I would be very happy to help you and guide you on your VFX journey. So that's all from me. See you guys around, and good luck. That's it, everybody. We did it. We finished the project. I hope you learned something new. I hope you got inspired. If you're just starting out, I hope this will kickstart your VFX journey. If you're already on your VFX path, I hope this will give you an extra boost in creativity and motivation. That's all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Caleb is gonna talk about some next steps, so I'm gonna leave it to him to finish up this workshop. Take care.